was a city of hustle and bustle.
All of the talent that has come out of Detroit.
I keep saying, what's the catch? Why does Michael Bolton want to come and make a movie about Detroit? But we're more than happy to have you here, and we're not going to ask too many questions.
There are so many different connections that lead back to Detroit. I had to be 10, maybe, you know, growing up in Connecticut. And my brother would play me blues records and introduce me to this record that was a life changer for me, which was Fingertips, Part 1, Part 2, Stevie Wonder. Alice Cooper, who I didn't know was from Detroit, was also an artist that I would listen to and enjoy as a kid. You know, I was really like pre-teen when I was first hearing these great singers, great artists. I'm Michael.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming by. I hire all previously homeless and currently homeless women from shelters. It's a bag during the day that transforms into a coat when you need it. It's also water resistant, made from recycled car parts and recycled post-industrial scrap, but it's also becomes a full sleeping bag.
I had been touring through Detroit and around the country probably for 30 years or so. And it was hard not to notice that Detroit was not being rebuilt like a lot of other cities that we have seen go through redevelopment. And we weren't seeing that happen. We weren't seeing this rebuilding of Detroit happening. We were allowed to bring our cameras to Hitsville. While we were there, we found out that some people were doing big things for Detroit. And we were curious about it and got permission to visit. The first big visit, important one we had really, was Dan Gilbert at Quicken Loans. We went to see him and we interviewed him. We talked to him for quite a while, and then we started spending time with some of the ambassadors of Detroit who work with Quickens, give people tours about buildings available, space, and people who want to invest and encourage it. We started to notice that the things we were hearing about the growth in Detroit were true. And we started to get really close to the sources of basically the money that was being poured into rebuilding Detroit. There's a love for Detroit that you can't miss if you spend enough time around Detroit. It's part of the reason we didn't have a problem getting people to make these great statements and interviews, from Francis Ford Coppola to Alice to a lot of different artists, including Aretha Franklin. All of these moments that people gave were basically their heartfelt experiences and memories of their childhood, and they speak glowingly of Detroit now as it is today. There's so many different stories that they all had to share that were all powerful in different ways. Everybody has a different type of compelling story. And Aretha talks about her father. She's very proud that her father spent quite a bit of time with Martin Luther King Jr. and was there for the rally that was created before he did the I Had a Dream speech in DC. It actually took place in Detroit. And we have this great footage of that. Alice Cooper has a very kind of entertaining story about his childhood and his father, the kind of music that he listened to, and the friendship that he had with all of the artists, the R&B artists, his friends who were Irish, Italian, Polish, like from everywhere in the world. There's a lot of laughter during Alice's testimony. There's such a consistent kind of thread back to childhood in Detroit, the becoming years, the continuing love for Detroit, the continuing pulling for Detroit, rooting for Detroit to come back throughout the whole film. I want people to be moved by this film. I don't expect everyone to feel the same exact way that I do in making this film and in viewing the film, but I'm pretty confident people are going to come away with the same sense of wishing and hoping for the success of the comeback of Detroit to its maximum possibilities.